So, before continuing on to discussing the next module and the discussion of the problem of relativism, moral relativism, we should first address something particular, right? And that is approaches to the study of ethics, right? There are multiple ways we can go about studying ethics, right? Or at least approaching the study. Broadly speaking, there are two not mutually exclusive, but two ways that we can approach ethics, right? So when I say they're not mutually exclusive, I mean a theory can be primarily one or the other and have elements of the other in it, or it can be exclusively one or the other, right? And these two ways are the scientific approach, which is largely descriptive. What the scientific approach to the study of ethics does is it says this is how the brain operates, then this is how our moral thinking works, right? There's no getting around that, right? Or it tries to make arguments that this is the case. So it doesn't tell us how we should act, it tells us, or it doesn't tell us how we should act or make moral judgments, it tells us how we already do, right? And what that means. And tries to make inroads to explaining why that is, right? And then there's the philosophical approach, right, which itself breaks down into sort of three broad subcategories. There are normative theories, right, which are prescriptive moral theories. That is to say, they tell us how we should live, how we should think, right, how morality ought to be, in a broad sense. It's not dictatorial for the most part, but it is in fact prescriptive. It says this is what we should aspire to, or this is the minimum standard, some form of that. So these theories apply a standard of right or wrong, right and wrong, to which we should judge a situation. And these standards are norms, hence the name normative theory. And a norm is just basically particular rules or standards within a theory that we use for judgment. Second, there are metaethical theories. And metaethical theories are an analytical step back away from saying this is how we should do this to examine the nature of moral theories themselves to see whether or not something is we're on the right track, right? Or even if the questions of whether or not we should make value judgments in one way or another is a legitimate one. So it analyzes the common presumptions amongst amongst ethics or within ethics, right? And tries to make some judgment about those preconceptions, as it were. And then finally, we have applied ethics. And applied ethics is just what it sounds. It's the application of ethics or a specific moral theory within a specific domain, right? So an example of this would be medical ethics, right? The Hippocratic Oath, do no harm, seek to aid, yada, 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 or legal ethics. And then we can break this down to individual issues as well, right? Moral issues as well, such as applying the theory like deontology to abortion, or applying consequentialism to, you know, to going to war, or to the death penalty, things like that. All right. So applied ethics is where we take specific instances and we're applying a general theory to them. In some cases, they can be professional codes like medical or legal ethics. In some cases, it can be a specific action that we think might have moral bearing, like abortion or the death penalty or war. All So last thing before we move on is some terminology, right? Um, there are three terms with relation to morality that we should define, right? When we say that something is moral, specifically as it applies to a theory, we're saying that we are making that it is a value within that theory regarding what's right or wrong, good or bad. And when we say that something is immoral, we're saying that it's in violation of those normative standards within a theory. Then finally, the last one, and this is an important distinction, is amoral. When something is amoral, it has nothing at all to do with morality. Right? It has nothing to do with right or wrong. It's neither moral nor immoral. It just is. Right? One example of this would be taking a book, opening it, and shutting it. Right? So just shutting a book is amoral. Taking a book and shutting it intentionally on someone's hand, right? That might be considered immoral, right? By some weird perverts who think that shutting a book on people's hands is some obstruction of morality. I'm not a good person. You'll learn more from me in this course by example of what not to do by what I've done than probably through any theory. Though you will learn the theories, I hope. Okay, so quick exercise that I want you guys to do is, and this is an exercise in metaethics, is I want you to examine what we mean by the word good by comparing how we use the word good when we use it to describe a hammer versus when we use it to describe a person. Right? I believe that might even be in either this module or the next table where we break that down.